So I already apologized to you. Let me apologize again if you expect a sermon about the Iran Pact. Sorry. I will be speaking tomorrow at a number of the occasions about Israel, and I will mention and have some brief comments about that controversy in the Jewish community that erupted during these past months. But tonight, on Kol Nidre, I'm going to be speaking about life and death and how we benign neglect the implications of both. One of those implications is that life always offers the unexpected. I had learned a story recently about a married man who for several years was having an affair with a Jewish woman, and she became unexpectedly pregnant by him. And he decided, since he was married and didn't want to disrupt his family, to send her to Israel where he would take care of all of her needs, and she went there. But he gave her this instruction. He said, when the moment arrives and you give birth, just send me a postcard with a simple Yiddish word on it for kugel, lokshen. Just send the word lokshen and I'll know. Well, a few months later, he came home and his wife said, I got this very strange postcard. Do you know what it means? And he looked at it and it said, lokshen, lokshen, lokshen. One with knedlach, two without. Send more soup. Kol Nidre reminds us that things will happen beyond our control and beyond our imagination. That's why we say for all the vows that we will make during this next year, against our will, we ask forgiveness, because we don't know about next year. It's why we say who will live and who will die, because we don't know. We ignore reality and we kind of have methods for trying to put away that unexpected concept of our lives. I got a New Year's card, actually, a couple of weeks ago that I'd never received before. It was very detailed. It had a special red string in it, in a package, with instructions of how to knot it properly with 7 knots tied in a specific way, and a special prayer in order to keep the evil eye so it won't get me this year. I know it resonates because I've seen the strings. In Israel, one of the things they've noticed in the hospitals is that patients who've been coming for a while for treatment are suddenly showing up with different names. They're following an old Jewish custom that says it's a superstition that if the angel of death is coming to get you and can't find you by your name, he will leave and not take you. So they've been changing their names and going by different names when they come to the hospital. And this has actually been written about in medical journals in Israel. Now, we scoff at some of these methods, but I do want to say that the philosopher Ernest Becker, in his book, The Denial of Death, talks about the various ways that we actually do put death or put that possibility aside in our lives. We set up things like trying to achieve success, acquisition of various objects, pursuits of pleasure, the ceaseless rage at activity, the glorification of our own power. And he says, we seem to feel that we can solve any problem, overcome any obstacle, if we just do more, if we just think about it long and hard enough, if we just try a little harder. According to the Midrash, Moses himself wasted the last hours of his life in denial that he would actually die. I go to funerals and I see the pure groups from the person who died, and they slowly approach the grave, and they take the shovel, and I see in their eyes that fear that I might be next. And then, as they walk away, the moment passes, and they go on to something else, talking about their golf game or where they're going to have lunch or some other aspect of their life, and forgetting about the reality that, yes, they might be next. Any of us might be. I read this book this past year that really influenced me, called Being Mortal. I hope some of you have read it. If you haven't, I hope you will. It's by Atul Gawande, and it's a book that changed my life about thinking about my own death and dying. It really prodded me to take steps in my life that I've been putting off, and that I know that many in our congregation put off as well. Like most of us, we don't really like to confront the idea of our own mortality. Even on the high holidays, even when we recite prayers about all of this, we somehow don't want to face it. Abigail Pogrebin had a blog this year where she actually lived through all the Jewish holidays, and she took seriously the prayer. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed, who shall live and who shall die? And she wrote this, who shall see ripe age and who shall not? And she says, my childhood friend Dan died a few weeks ago while swimming in the ocean. It's real. Who shall perish by fire? And she writes, 6 members of a New Jersey family who are related to the woman that works the counter where I get breakfast died in a fire on Father's Day. Who by sword? Stephen Sotloff, James Foley. And who by beast? And she read just 3 days earlier about a 22-year-old who was mauled by a bear. And who by plague? Ebola. These are real. These things happened and continue to happen, and they are unimagined and unexpected. We enter Yom Kippur denying our instincts because we don't eat and we don't drink. We focus on our souls, we say the words, we sing the songs, but most of the time we keep our defenses up at full strength, not letting it really penetrate into us, lest we be forced to change and to deal with some of the reality. Now, many of you who've been here for years know that I've spoken about my own mortality a few times and some of the epiphanies I've had and the changes that I've made along the way. I am the longest living Glickstein male in my family for at least the last 2 centuries, and I haven't yet reached 68. I'm overweight. I have a family history of colon cancer on both sides. Now, over the years, I've addressed some of this with regular colonoscopies. That may be TMI, but weight loss, regular exercise, visits to appropriate physicians, healthy eating, mostly, and strategies to reduce stress. But I must admit that, and I admit it to myself daily, that I'm more and more frustrated that even though in years past, 20 years ago, I took off 115 pounds, I've added 40 of them back. And I can't get them off. And my waist has inexorably grown, no matter how many planks and sit-ups I continue to do. I'm really trying to live long and healthy. It's a daily struggle. It never, ever stops. Now, for those of us who are old enough to remember party phone lines, I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands on that. We have a few hands going up anyway. My first phone in my family was a party line. Those were very frustrating. Green stamps, blue flash bulbs. Ooh. For anyone in those categories, you can certainly identify with the issues of aging that I've talked about. But Gawande's book, Being Mortal, prodded me to do something that I've been avoiding. Joni and I finally updated our will, which we had written decades ago. So thank God our children, who now have children of their own, will no longer be raised by anyone in the case of our deaths. We put their minds at ease, finally. And we updated our medical instructions and chose new surrogates thoughtfully. But the book stimulated 3 discussions in my family. 1, where and how I want to be buried. 2, what I want to leave to institutions that I believe in and which I've devoted much of my life to. And 3, sharing my end-of-life hopes and concerns with my nuclear family. Joni's parents, my parents, and my grandparents are buried in 3 different cemeteries in Los Angeles. And although we visited the graves, I have no desire to be buried there. I've lived away from LA for about 45 years. And although South Florida is my home, it's not the home of my extended family. And in time, I know that my name, like all the rabbis of the past, will fade into the receding historical footnotes that each of us occupy in the communities we're privileged to serve for a time. I want to be buried in the state of Israel. My love for and devotion to the upbuilding of that Jewish state has been the hallmark of my life and my rabbinate. And even though I don't live there yet, my heart, as Yehuda Levi wrote, lies in the east. And more seriously, I thought about my last years of life, the more I realized that I want to leave a legacy to the institutions and organizations that I am eternally grateful to. Joni and I have decided, in addition to the Jewish Federation of Greater Miami, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, and the National Council of Jewish Women, our largest gift will be to the community of Jews who helped raise our children, nurture us as a family, and allow me to lead and supported my vision, and gave us a home to all who seek it. Our priority legacy will be to Temple Beth Shalom. Joni and I have always given our largest gifts to this temple while we were alive. We felt it was appropriate that we do the same after our deaths. The emotional act that book stimulated involved Joni and me, our 6 adult children, and our 5 grandchildren. I bought that book for each of the 4 nuclear families in our close family. I asked each adult to read the book and then to join Joni and me in an open discussion about the way we view our lives and how we hope we will face our aging and our end years as a family. And the actual discussion was emotionally powerful and uncomfortable. It took place in a game room at a hotel in Los Angeles this summer. Our 5 grandchildren, aged 8.5 down to 1.5, miraculously took care of each other while we talked for about an hour. The 8 of us had an intense conversation. We spoke about life and death issues. And I'm not going to soft pedal this. Speaking to your spouse and your children about comas you might be in, or critical health decisions, or do not resuscitate, or nursing home possibilities is painful. But I have to tell you, it was also one of the most emotionally bonding talks that we've ever had as a family. Over my 41 years as a rabbi, I've come to understand that though most of us don't want to be in a home for older people, some of us do end up there. And some of us have great experiences there. The mother of my best friend has been in a facility for over 30 years, and they are, believe me, the best 30 years of her life. She never was a happy person until she got there. And she wasn't. She was a miserable person. And in this home, she's become the queen. She's flourished. But there are people who end up there and who aren't happy and who never express themselves. And I read about a woman, her name was Agnes, and the only way her family found out about her unhappiness was by a letter that she wrote to an elementary school. Now, the elementary school had invited these senior citizens to come for lunch and had met the kids, and they'd had a session, and then they had had a door prize. She won the door prize. It was a brand new radio. You all remember what a radio is? And she was so happy she wrote this letter. Dear Keene Elementary School, God bless you for the beautiful new radio I won at your recent Senior Center's luncheon. I am 84 years old and live at the Springer Home for the Aged. My roommate is 95 and has always had her own radio, but she would never let me listen to hers. The other day, her radio fell off the nightstand and broke into a lot of pieces. It was awful, and she was in tears. Her distress over the broken radio touched me, and I knew this was God's way of answering my prayers. She asked if she could listen to mine, and I told her to kiss my you-know-what. Thank you for the opportunity. Sincerely, Agnes. We all need to find a way to speak, I believe, to our loved ones about these issues. They won't go away. We'll each find ourselves one day dealing with the life and death in our own families. In my family, I initiated the conversation. In yours, it could be anyone, young or old. Not everyone is ready at a given moment. Sometimes it's a process, takes time. I recommend the book. It will help frame some of the issues. Being Mortal. It's a wonderful book, a wonderful read, very painful and very beautiful. Finding a way to begin this process will allow intense feelings and values that you hold dear to be expressed that otherwise would never be heard. My father died, and he never, ever had that conversation with anyone in the family. We never knew what his thoughts were or what mattered to him at the end. My mother, on the other hand, died, but she had told her children what she cared about. We were all there in those last days. We knew what she wanted. Still, it was hard, but still, we knew that quality of life mattered to her, and we were able to give her the palliative care that she needed to gently end her struggle. This year, Dave Goldberg died. His wife, Sheryl Sandberg, said she learned many lessons. She learned that faith matters, that choices matter, that family matters, that community matters, that gratitude matters, that legacy matters. Being Mortal, Gawanda writes about an expert in life endings discussions who finally had a talk with her own father. Here is an expert in the field who works with others who had never had that talk with her father. Finally, he said to her something that totally shocked her. He said, well, if I'm able to eat chocolate ice cream and watch football on TV, then I'm willing to stay alive. I'm willing to go through a lot of pain if I have a shot at that. Now, he'd never watched football games, and he didn't particularly like ice cream. But in his mind, that's all he cared about. If he could just do simple things like that, he wanted to be kept alive. Not everybody does. But those were values he finally was able to express. And even doctors and experts struggle in this area. Gawanda is a doctor. His father and mother were both doctors, and they struggled as well. On Rosh Hashanah, it's written, in Yom Kippur, it is sealed, who shall live and who shall die. But prayers and charity and repentance ease the harshness of the end. In today's world of medical decisions and crises, so does conversation with those you love who will be left to guide the end of the process in this world. I recommend that you take this seriously and somewhere you begin this process. Somehow, this year, begin taking steps to prepare and have your family be prepared. A book arrived this past week that was unsolicited called Bobby Wonderful, An Imperfect Son Buries His Parents. And it had at the end of his father's life this really lovely moment I wanted to share with you. It was at the end, and the father was finally able to express what he cared about, how he wanted to end. And his two sons, the brothers, agreed with him, and they were on the same page. And as the morphine drip was beginning to be increased, a rabbi came in. And these are the words that he spoke while holding the hand of the older man as he was dying, and as the two sons remembered these words after the death. Some like to suggest, at times like this, the rabbi said, to think about a spot inside you, inside all of us, when we're born, which is a little bit of God. It grows as you become a good son and a good parent, and it grows even more with every good deed you do in your life. Each time you listen, each time you help someone, it's a record of your achievements and the love you've shown throughout your life. And he said, being now with you, Mr. Morris, near the end of your life, all I have to do is look at you and look at your sons who love you so much, and I can imagine that by now that spot of God in you is pretty big. I want you to imagine your whole life, he said, now, if you can, and for each time you did something, help someone, regardless of how small, imagine it as a little glow, a spot of illumination that lights a long, dark roadway. So if you look behind you, you look at your whole life now, I imagine you see many, many lights glowing there, stretching back to the horizon. The end does come. The sons remember that story of light, and they see their father's light. They listened to his wishes. They were able to be with him at the end until the last breath, and they emerged whole and together. May this year be for you and those you love a year of health, a year of happiness and openness, a year of new beginnings, of conversations, of sharing values and wishes and discussions about what really matters to you today and tomorrow. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed, who shall live and who shall die. May you be written and sealed in the book of life. Gamar Chatima Tova.